What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Thursday night, September 21st, 2023. It's about 10:51 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity shows a 1.2 over here around the West Coast area. Looks like down around the Southern California region. We did see some deeper movement activity here across the area around the Mediterranean. A pretty deep earthquake kicking up here earlier this afternoon. You can see that ring raised well off the globe there, so watch for some further movement in that area. All right, we're going to start off here in the California area. 2.0 down here south of the border into the Baja California area. There's that 1.3 down. Looks like just off of the Mirage Valley fault zone outside of Lancaster and Victorville area. For the most part, we've seen just generally small microquake activity here across the Southern California region over the last 24 hours. Slight activity up here at Long Valley Supervolcano. That's one area that we have not seen any, like major swarming here in quite a while. Occasionally, they do get some earthquake swarms up here, and it's just been generally quiet. A handful of smaller quakes, though, in the last 24 hours, but just kind of notice that because that's one of the areas that do see some earthquake activity on occasion. Bay Area, pretty quiet, aside from some smaller quake activity here near the Santa Clara area. I was trying to make it sound a little bit harder than what it actually is. 2.9 and a couple other ones out here just south of the San Francisco area, just off of the plate boundary there. And, of course, up here, this is the Cobb Mountain area, which is the hydrothermal operations going on there with the Calpine. Look it up. It's actually a very interesting process there with the Calpine hydrothermal operations. 2.0 and a 2.4. Now, the 2.4 here and the 2.0 down there at about 24 kilometers deep or so. That is associated with the Cascadia subduction zone down there just south or just east here of this Cascadia megathrust area. So let's see here real quick what we got for the tremor activity tonight. 32 epicenters. Somewhat of a decline here, and mainly up around the Washington area. No tremor activity occurring in Northern California. We have seen, though, some tremor activity there in that region over the past week or so. Let me show you guys. Past week of activity. Seen a little bit of activity stirring up here in Northern California. Remember, this activity down dip downstream is a slippage type event, not earthquake activity, but when this takes place, there's strain building upstream here along the subduction zone, and if there's enough strain and built up tension here, we'll see earthquake activity. And it looks as though there may be just a little bit here up from the tremor region, a little bit further upstream here along the Cascadia subduction zone. But nothing major yet. That's just a yet. Eventually, that will produce a big 9.0 or greater. That's just, that's the facts, ma'am. All right. Outside Mount St. Helens here, a little bit of activity and some movement occurring north here. 14 kilometers deep with a 1.6. Kind of watching this. It's been an ongoing event around Mount St. Helens of earthquake activity. Nothing major going on there yet of noteworthy activity. Yellowstone National Park. Not a whole lot going on, but we will check this out here. Let's bring up the seismograph stations. Let's see here. What is this earthquake activity? To me, that kind of looks like it. You guys see that? Little spitter spatter of earthquake activity occurring a few hours ago. Let me see here. Let me take a look at this. Let me see what the weather was like out here. I mean, even though it looks like somewhat earthquake activity, the thunderstorms and whatnot will trigger this type of event. So let me go back here. This is approximately... let's see where the latest seismograph station is. Is that correct here? I don't know. I got so many windows open. Goodness. Over the past few hours, let me just double check and see what we got there across the windy map, which is the one of the maps out here that you can monitor rainfall and thunderstorm activity. So I just want to look at the weather radar over the past 6 hours, generally up in this area. It looks as though it's pretty active. So that may be, not earthquake activity, but some thunderstorm activity that blew through that region earlier in the afternoon time period. Let's see what we got, though. Look at that. Yeah, coming up through the south. Quite a bit of thunderstorm activity that triggered those readings across the park here. And again, that was earlier this afternoon, 2300. We're talking about maybe 5-6 hours ago is when that activity triggered up there. So I don't think that's earthquake activity, although, I wish it was. I'm kind of a big fan of Yellowstone swarms. I like to study it. But looking at the rest of the park, there's that same type of signature out here that looks like it may be, thunderstorms and wind-related activity. So that's just it. Weather outside interference there across Yellowstone National Park. Always good to check out the backups, right? See what's going on out there. A little bit of movement outside of Duncan area. Duncan, been out here quite a few times chasing thunderstorms. 2.8 and quite a few 2s and even a 3.0 out here in this little cluster of activity outside of Velma. What do you think? What is out here? Shall we take a look and see what's out there? Well, it looks as though there's some county roads that lead out to some ponds or some wells out here. You can barely see the tanks. I think we'd have to bring up Google Earth in order to see a closer view. But that's obviously some type of oil pumping operation out there. You see the little tanks here, 1, 2, 3. And, it looks like they are peppered out here across the landscape. So we got some earthquake activity occurring out here against a little cluster. A little cluster of activity out here in these oil fields there in Texas region. Doesn't really necessarily say oil fields out here across the land. Well, just right down here, a couple miles or so northwest, some type of northwest oil field. So we know this area is littered with oil fields, and that's just a given to see earthquake activity out there when the plate, North American plate, is under stress. As far as the pressure gradients out here. 4.9 just off the coast of the Nicaragua area into the Middle America Trench, 47 kilometers deep there. South America region, fairly quiet for the most part. Pretty much a handful of smaller earthquakes there in the last 24 hours. Let's check out the earthquake 3D globe here and see what we got. It's cluttered. It's cluttered, but there's quite a few 2s and 3s out there. Middle America Trench southward into South America. Again, this is it's almost always active out there in terms of smaller earthquake activity. That's why we see that cluster of movement on any given day out there on the globe. Same for the Indonesia Islands area. Look at that deep earthquake, though, outside the Philippines region. That ring is raised pretty far off the globe. Not quite as far as this one, but we got some deep activity stirring up down below the surface. May be a sign of things ramping up out here soon in terms of some large-scale activity. 6.0 out the Vanuatu region earlier this afternoon. That's going to be this earthquake right here, 6.1 to be exact. Somewhat deep as well, 188 kilometers deep. One earthquake here in the Kermadec Trench. That was from earlier this morning at 5.7. But you notice how the adjustment takes place here further along the plate boundary. Right, got the Kermadec Trench earthquake, and then, of course, subsequent activity across the general plate area, and that's obvious here. It shows us the northwestward movement here across the Pacific plate. This area is bound to get hit. You can follow the arrows. Just follow the arrows. That's where the pressure is going to be. A little bit of movement up here into the Filipino plate. Last one, it looks like a 4.7, 10 kilometers deep down here in the Philippines. Of course, that's a super deep earthquake there on the globe. 574 kilometers for that 4.4. So watch this area. Things definitely showing some heightened activity. 4.6 in the Vietnam region, 10 kilometers deep. That thing's shaking things up out here slightly. off of the plate boundary, west of the South China Sea. Over here around Afghanistan, a handful of deeper earthquake activity here in the last 24 hours. And northwest Iran, extreme northwest Iran here, 4.4 coming in early this morning. As far as the Mediterranean goes, we got some activity stirring up here with the, of course, that deeper activity here around Turkey and a handful of earthquakes across the Mediterranean and some movement in Morocco with a 4.0. The Atlantic Ocean, for the most part, pretty quiet. And that's how the ball rolls, or that's how the cookie crumbles, so to speak, right? All right, 4.7 eastern Greenland, way up north here, off the plate boundary, interplate earthquake here, 10 kilometers deep. Who knows? I mean, do we really know? Is this thing littered with seismograph stations up here? I can't help but wonder what's going on across Antarctica as well. Do we know what's going on specifically around this area as far as earthquake activity goes? Is there seismograph stations scattered about the Antarctica area? I doubt it. There might be a few, but I don't think there's as much as we realize, or as much as there should be. Definitely a little scattered out there. All right, the Big Island of Hawaii, we got a 1.7 out here. The latest information out here across the area of Kilauea and the Mauna Loa region. Well, let's see what we got. Here's the latest here across the Kilauea volcano. Just going to zoom in here real quick and see what we got far as inflationary data goes for the UWE station, which looks like it's offline. Let's see here. It does show, at least here in the last few hours, some slight uptick. Is this today's activity, 921? Looks like it is. I'm definitely seeing some slight uptick in the inflationary tilt. Far as the webcam goes out there across the region, yeah, things look, still pretty bright out here. There's some bright features out there in the crater of Kilauea volcano. That does show that things are still active. And the reason why is because that magma below the surface stays hot, right? We just had an eruption there across Kilauea volcano. So, most of the time when magma spews up from these lava vents, it cools, right? And it hardens. But when it's below the surface there, it stays in that melted level. So that's why we're seeing these hot areas out here across the lava lake of Kilauea volcano. And that will probably continue for a little while. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're looking at an impending eruption there across Kilauea volcano. There's not a whole lot of earthquake activity. I was just looking at that here just a few minutes ago. But the magma, it's still hot, right? It doesn't cool down fast unless it's up at the surface areas. A look at the seismograph stations out here. Let's see if I can get this one to pull up. It shows only a handful of smaller earthquakes out there. I'm really not seeing any major magma intrusion out there as far as harmonic tremor goes. So Kilauea volcano is currently resting for the most part. I don't see that stirring up anytime, at least anytime in the near future. And the same with Mauna Loa out here. Seismograph stations out there shows relatively calm conditions. No magma movement occurring out there around the Mauna Loa area for now. All right, New Zealand. Let's see what we got out there for the latest information on the New Zealand area. 5 hours ago, 3.4. Well, that's great. 3.4, that's, let's see what we got here. Across the South Island area where our earthquake swarming's taking place. It still looks like things are very active out here in terms of aftershock movement. Doesn't look like we've seen any major elevated activity. Again, we're still seeing some 2s and 3s out there following that movement. That 6-pointer there a couple days ago in the South Island region. Just kind of watching that, seeing how it plays out. All right, space weather activity here across the sun. It looks like we are currently flaring. We do have some type of a flare activity occurring here from our culprit sunspot, creating some blackout conditions across the sunlit side of the Earth. And that's obviously not over here. So areas, on that side of the world, opposite side of me, are currently seeing some flaring activity, and that's going to be coming from this beautiful and scary sunspot region. I think this thing is about ready to blast off an X flare. I'm not even joking. So not only this area, but notice this region up here showing some brightening within that solar sunspot core. But this one's just super dynamic, and it's just whispering around all these solar magnetic lines and filaments, and it's just chaotic looking. And that's going to be from sunspot 3435, which has been a culprit of quite a few M flares and C flares here recently, and upper M flares. So this thing is still looking fairly dynamic. That regional sunspot that is producing the bright region up here, this little area right here, notice that that's currently flaring as well. It looks like maybe some C flare activity is coming from 3443, which is now positioned a little bit further over here. And I believe it's coming specifically from this side of the sunspot. Notice the complex structure here. When these colors here are numerous and peppered within the core and very close together, that's when you get the complex structure of the sunspots. And it looks like that area is starting to develop slightly, but I'm a little bit more concerned with this area. We'll watch this here in the coming days. But also, down here in the southeastern limb of the sun, this thing is popping off what looks like some complex structure within that sunspot core. That is an area to watch pretty closely. It's not named, but as you can see here, look again. Let me pull this up. Notice all these different colors. If you look really closely, this is very dynamic and set up here for some large flaring if it does get going. Right now we're looking at a 99% certainty of C flare activity, M flare at 55, X flare remains elevated at 10% chance. And there's your flares here over the last 24 or 48 hours, coming from the culprit 3435 with a couple large M flares. Of course, that's going to be that one that's again directly facing us, and it just looks it looks like it's like it wants to pop off something major. Just look at this feature out here, pretty crazy looking. And that will obviously affect the 3-day here if we do get some major CMEs produced. We did see a couple Earth-directed flares here, large M flares. And it looks as though maybe it did shoot off some partial CMEs. Because that has changed here on the 3-day geomagnetic forecast. It looks like maybe a potential G1 class storm incoming on the 23rd and 24th time period. Nothing major. This ain't a huge G3 or G4 storm. This is just something minor, but we will continue to watch that in the days ahead. All right, what else do we have here? Oh, let's go over here to the National Hurricane Center real quick and chat about this tropical development out here in the Atlantic. 16 is the key word. We do have some tropical storm warnings, or tropical storm warnings out here across areas of North Carolina, Virginia, stretching up north here. Now, this is not expected to reach hurricane strength levels, but it is expected to bring some rainfall and some potential flash flooding here soon. As you can see, at least 15% chance here across this area of the eastern portion of the country. Again, not anything major going on, but it is still something to watch here if you're out there in that region. Far as the numerical model goes, keep an eye on this here, number 16. We'll watch that kind of tighten up a little bit as we advance the weather model, and it doesn't have enough time to grow up, so to speak. If this had backed off a little bit here and had a day or two of strengthening, this could turn into a major hurricane and hit the eastern portion of the country. But fortunately, things are set up the way they are. Yes, there's going to be some rainfall, maybe potential for flash flooding, but the other scenario could have been worse had this thing had time to strengthen. Out here along the west coast, well, goodness, it's supposed to be about 49 degrees here tonight where I live, just outside of Chico in the Sacramento Valley, and it's not cold, But that's the coldest temperature we've had since probably about early spring or so. So we got some cooler weather and some rain chances coming up here early next week, with a low pressure system being reinforced there. And it looks like that may be the weather pattern change that I'm hopeful for as we head into fall. It's looking beautiful. I know the folks out here across the eastern portion of the country ain't going to like it, because most of the time troughing out here indicates some strengthening of ridging, which is high pressure and warmer temperatures out across the plain. So let's see what we got here. Let's check out the symbols. There's our low pressure system from well, that's right now. Cooler weather over the west coast. That's going to be re-enhanced here. And again, look at this high pressure system building up here in Canada. That's not good news for those folks, but keep it up there. I don't want it. I don't want it at all. And towards at least the first week, second week almost of October, looks like maybe some high pressure building out here across the western portion of the country, troughing on the east. But that's all subject to change, because these weather models are really pretty much only somewhat accurate, at least into the next few days or so. And that's kind of where we're looking at the cooler temperatures across the California region and the Pacific Northwest. Far as precipitation and moisture goes, well, let's take a look, see if we got any measurable rainfall out here across the west. Obviously up in the Vancouver Island range into Canada, Washington and Oregon getting a couple inches of rainfall. Here in Northern California, where I'm at, we're expecting maybe half of an inch total from these couple systems that are coming in. But either way, this is a good sign. I'd rather have this over 110 degrees, because September and October here in California, if you don't live here, you'd be surprised to know that it can easily be 100 degrees or hotter this time of year here in Northern California. It's not the place to be if you like heat. Well, if you like heat, yes. But if you like, the cooler weather like I do in fall and winter when it's supposed to be cooler, well, this ain't the place to be. But today, this year so far, we're looking good. All right, what else do we have here, folks? Anything major going on here across the seismograph stations? Doesn't look like it. We'll continue to keep an eye on Hawaii, see if anything pops off there. But right now, all the graphs, at least for the most part, from what I can see, are very minimal. Everything's taking a break. I don't see any influx of magma, no magma intrusion, no earthquake swarms. Slight tilt, yes, that's obviously an indicator of some pressure and steam, volcanic gases building up here against the Kilauea volcano area. But we'll continue to watch it and report back on it. For now, folks, we'll catch you guys later. We are getting very close here to the 100,000 subscriber giveaway coming up here in about a week or so, about 8 or 9 days. So get in on that if you want to win some prizes. Again, if you don't, well, then let's give it to someone that might. Maybe at least jump in. If you win and you don't want to win prizes, well, say, I would like to give it to Timothy. Say, you know what? Timothy deserves to win some prizes, so we'll give it to Timothy, one of our moderators here on the channel, and of course a member. And of course he's entered into the 100,000 subscriber giveaway as well. So, that's kind of what I'm getting at. If you don't want to win it, at least make someone else's day by giving them some prizes, kind of paying it forward, so to speak. All right, I think that's it. Have a good night. Stay safe out there. And guess what? Friday. We got Friday coming up. It's already Friday for some of the folks out here. But here in California, that will be tomorrow. Take care. We'll catch you guys back here early tomorrow morning. Stay safe.